Super. All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live event. As you probably know, my name's Michelle Ansell, Managing Partner at Douglas Jackson, and we're a high-end retained search consultancy specialising in customer and consumer-centric businesses placing diverse, impactful leadership. As part of our ongoing educational and insight events, I'm delighted to be joined today by Dr. Lucy Ryan. Lucy's an executive coach. She's qualified to master practitioner level. She's a business psychologist and a trainer for the last 20 years. And Lucy's passionate about developing people so that their confidence, impact, and natural talents grow and flourish. Lucy helps teams and individuals find their voice, develop their presence, and have impact in the boardroom, and lead and motivate teams with passion and insight. Lucy's new leadership book, Lunchtime Learning for Leaders, will be published through Kogan Page in October. In fact, it's available for pre-sale via Amazon now, and we will pop the links in the chat box through this session. There'll also be an opportunity to ask Lucy questions towards the end of the session, so please do post anything you would like to ask in the chat box as we go. So I'll stop my share and pass over to Lucy, and I hope you all enjoy the session. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll close my participants there, Michelle, and pass over to you to do that. Morning, everyone. We've got a lovely hour together, and what I thought I'd do is spend about 15 minutes doing the first part, if you like, of the session where we talk about leadership imbalance, how to recognize it in yourself, what it is, the impact of it. Then I'll check in on chat for any of your questions, or given that we're about 35 people at the moment, I'll just check in if you've got any burning questions halfway through. And then I'll do the second half in terms of 6 different strategies for realigning your leadership life. And then I'll take Q&A at the end. Does that sound okay? Grand. Okay, fantastic. If you've got, it's quite useful if you've got a piece of paper and pen, because I will be asking you to draw some circles as we go along. You won't have to be having to share them with anyone or do anything beautifully artistic, but it's quite useful as we're walking through this. So do grab one if you haven't got one, as I just kick off with the first slide. So let us begin. So Michelle, thank you for that introduction. And because I specialise in strengths and strengths-based coaching as a positive psychologist, I just thought I would let you know these are my 4 top strengths. A love of learning, which you'll start to see, vitality and passion, a belief in other people's resourcefulness. So as a coach, I believe you are all able to find solutions yourselves, and humour and playfulness, which I always think when someone else had that recently, the strength of humour, they said they took it home to their husband who said, "You're not funny, tell me a joke." So I'm always slightly nervous about putting that one up. But that's what I will bring to the next hour for all of you. Now, let's go back to the beginning and let's just define what leadership is. Now, this is how I define it, which is anyone who holds themselves accountable for developing the potential in other people. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward. There are abundant definitions, as you know, but that works. That works for me. Now, that sounds good with a big but, which is the real art of leadership is actually holding true to this when you've got lots of demands placed on you. So, for example, if you think about broadly different demands placed on us, like the pressure to perform, the pace of change, the demands of others, the need to stay resilient and maintain the energy to lead. And oh my God, we can add now to this list a global pandemic, hybrid working, mounting mental anxieties, new expectations, shifting target operating models. Seriously, the challenge for leaders is bigger than I've ever seen it. And I wish I could credit someone with this quote, because I can't remember who said to me, "Remember, Lucy, the pace of change you're experiencing today is the slowest it will ever be." And I remember taking this huge gulp of, oh my God, that's true. Now, what happens, given all of this, is that that beautiful definition of leadership, where we're accountable for others and we help them fulfill their potential, shrinks. And what happens for most people that I work with is this, is that we actually become managers again. And it's easy to forget how seductive management is. So let's think about it. And I'll separate this out for you in a moment, leadership and management, by the way. But it's worth just considering how seductive it is to manage other people. It's fast. We feel needed. It gets results. You feel good. You're in control. You're doing what you do best as a functional expert. Everyone comes to you. You're the go-to person. You're directing everyone's actions. Oh my God, that feels good, rather than sitting above the action. I'm just going to go back to that once. So that's what happens to a lot of people when we're under pressure and challenge. Leadership tends to sink down and shrink, and managing comes to the fore. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes this is needed. You know, we needed it more than ever 2 years ago when the pandemic started, or whatever it is, 20 months now. And you needed very decisive, speedy action. The trouble is you get stuck there. And then it's quite hard to get unstuck. Let me explain more what I mean. We can broadly and a little bit crudely define leadership and management with these 3 circles. So we've got leadership, we've got management, we've got coaching. Now, I can draw a line down the middle here. On the left is authority. And on the right is autonomy. Now, here's what I mean. And a lot of clients absolutely love this model, by the way, of mine, because it's so simple. Now, if you are managing someone, you have authority. You direct the action. They do what you tell them to do. This is how you want them to work. This is when you want them to come to work. These are the days you now want them to work. This is how you want them to dress. This is how you want them to speak to customers. If you're coaching someone, they have autonomy. They decide how they will speak to customers. They might have a framework, but they'll decide how to use it. They'll decide how to work with whom. They'll decide how to get something done and in what time frame. And leadership spans above that. Another way to look at this is the beautiful analogy of whether you're on the dance floor or the balcony. Comes from Heifetz on his book, Adaptive Leadership. And there's this sense of, if you're on the dance floor managing, you're down there doing the do in the action. If you're on the balcony, you're watching, you're above it. And the thing is we need a blend of all of this. Sometimes you need to be on the dance floor and sometimes you need to be on the balcony. only in the very biggest conglomerates that I work with do leaders have that privilege of always just staying up there on the balcony and never doing the do. I think it's unrealistic when we just separate it completely out and expect leaders just to be here, managers just to be here, and ne'er the twain meet. The reality is it's much more mucky and grey than that. But you have to know whether you're on the dance floor or whether you're on the balcony. Now, let's take that all a stage further and look at these different imbalances. Now, here's the first imbalance. So this is when, if you're drawing your three bubbles, and I urge you to, just as we're talking this through, start to write this down on a piece of paper. Start to draw at the moment, what do your three circles look like? They don't have to meet. They don't have to be any prescribed size. This is probably the most common one, though, that I see at the moment from clients. And I'll hear from you in a moment. Now, you will know yours looks like this. When you're telling more than coaching, you want to delegate, but oh God, it takes so much time. It's hard for you to take time out. Your inbox is chock-a-block. Everyone's coming to you with their issues. You know you should, think and reflect, but you just sit there and go, and when do I do that? That's when this kind of imbalance is going on. The impact of it is typically that you're not growing your team or your succession plan effectively enough. People start leaving your team actually because they want to be developed elsewhere. People rely on you too much. And you don't have enough time. More importantly, you don't have enough time to even think about what's going on. The idea of being a strategic leader feels so far out there, it feels a bit of a joke. So you're not carving out enough space to think about why, what next, how come. That's the management imbalance. Now, this one is far harder to spot. And you'll know this when either in yourself or in your own manager, which is when someone is so far and for so long on the balcony, they've lost sight of what's happening on the ground. And you'll know when your leadership bubble is too big, where you've got a sense that there are some deep systemic issues going on, but you're not quite sure what they are, and you're not quite sure that everyone's telling you what you need to hear. They're telling you what they feel is politically correct to tell you, but you've not got a sense you're actually digging deep into these systemic issues. It's also quite common when your leadership bubble is very big that you've lost sight of the customer and what they're saying and what they're asking and what their problems might be. And you're removed from the action. And you'll know that, or rather the impact on other team, you'll know it from that, but the impact on the team is people are not sure you understand what's going on. And trust actually starts to diminish because people stop coming to you because they're not sure that you actually get it. Then we've got the third main imbalance, where your coaching bubble is swamping your management and your leadership bubble. Now, You're leading with this model. You're leading, it's great. You're leading through autonomy and trust. We love it. When it gets imbalanced, the most common thing you'll know is that it's difficult conversations have become difficult. So there's that decisive action, the difficult conversations are not happening enough. So you're leading through autonomy, you're leading through questions, but you're a step removed from it, and you're not stepping in to leading people when you need to, decisively, with good action. So you're not, let me put it another way, not grabbing the reins when necessary. All right. So before I do walk you through some strategies here, let me just check in swiftly. Are there one or two any burning questions at the moment as you've started to sketch out your 3 circles? Are there any burning questions you've got there? No. You're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask. I'll manage our time. If not, you could, Fiona, you could relate to all 3. Do you know, Fiona, it's a really good point. I get that. And actually, that's a really good point I should have made, which is it's not that your 3 circles are ever going to be beautifully in balance. What you're likely to find is it shifts and flows, you know, sometimes every day in quite a confusing way. Or, for example, you go into a meeting and you are ready to be a beautiful leader at that meeting, and someone consistently interrupts you, and you suddenly find yourself shrinking back into a position you didn't intend to be in, and the bubbles shift. So you'll find it ebbs and flows, and the art of this is awareness. The art of it is really understanding what's going on, hence the model works, which is being able to go, wow, this week I've been like that. So thanks for that, Fiona. And let me just, it's a very neat segue, actually, Fiona, without you knowing it, to where we'll go next with strategies. So what we're planning to do with these 6 strategies that I'm going to walk you through is we're going to, keeping this dance floor and balcony analogy, we're dancing back into balance. Think of this as stepping in and stepping out of management and leadership. That's what we're trying to do here, and knowing where you are and what you're doing. So let's have a look at these. I'm going to walk you through 6 different strategies, and then I'd love to hear, after I've gone through these, which ones you relate to and which ones you think, oh, that would be useful. Now, the first one, as I was just saying, is awareness. So what I would urge you to do is draw those 3 bubbles or circles and look at the shape of your leadership balance. And the second thing to ask yourself is, how long has it been in that state? It might be, like Fiona was just saying, that you dance through them all quite swiftly. Or it might be that, like that first one, management imbalance, has been like that since March 2020. And you've got stuck in that one and you just haven't kind of found your leadership mojo again. So you want to ask yourself how long it's been. And then thirdly, you want to draw a second diagram, which is what do you want it to look like going forwards? So awareness is going to be your best friend through all of this in getting your leadership balance in shape. Which leads me to strategy 2. The next thing you want to consider is your triggers. So most of us, if you hold any sort of leadership position, most of us want to hold true to that. We want to be a strategic leader and be up on the balcony when it's required of us. We want to do the do and step down into managing when we need to do it. And we want to leave space and time to coach others. Now, for an imbalance to be in place, something triggers us. And you have to know what those triggers are. So is it someone? Is it a particular situation? Is it stress and pressure? What and who triggers those 3 circles to go out of shape? And what do you need to grab hold of then to shift that pattern back again? And there's so many different triggers. For instance, I have clients who have tried to extend their coaching bubble, found that it just took so much time that they've gone back to tell, and we'll talk about that shortly. So other people find that it's just so much easier to manage, or they've delegated and it's gone wrong and they've been held accountable. So therefore it's easier to do it themselves. Or there's a culture of blame going on through the organization. So better to protect the team and stay in that management bubble. And then in terms of leadership, it's sometimes hard to stay up in leadership because your team actually is not the team below you. Your team is the senior leadership team above you. And sometimes that's hard to keep that going. So know your triggers, know what's going on to shift or change your balance. Now, this is probably, it's probably the most powerful piece of advice I can give you. It's also probably the most common theme for me, other than relationships, by the way, in leadership coaching, which is letting go. Now, in order to realign your leadership, you have to let go of something. And anyone who knows William Bridges' work, his transition work, or his book, Managing Transitions, will know that this is his first stage of transitions, that we have to let go in order to change any behavior. And Michelle and I were talking about behavior change before you all joined us. And it's really hard to enact. And I think a lot of us thought after the pandemic, behavior change would be sustained. And of course, a lot of people like elastic have pinged back to where they were. We all thought we were going to be so uber kind for the rest of our lives because of the pandemic. And I was saying I'm a road cyclist. And I find the road rage going on to cyclists even more profound than it ever used to be. So we have to let go of the behaviors we're wedded to. Now, whether those are as a manager or as too much up there as a leader or too much over here as a coach, we have to let go. The biggest one is letting go of being the functional expert. If you want to be a strategic people leader, you have to let go of being the expert. And oh my God, that's hard. It's dead sexy being the person that everyone turns to. And to allow other people to be that person, and actually is hard, but what's harder still for you all to extend your leadership bubble is to be in the not knowing bubble. And I'd love to hear in a moment if you recognize that, because it's really hard to not know, particularly if you're used to knowing. So it's really hard to go to a presentation, people to ask you questions and go, I don't know the answer to that. It's hard to be in a leadership meeting and not know what to say because you don't actually understand that function and it's not a function you've worked in before. That's really hard. It's hard to let go of being the best, or of being any of you in the room who know you're perfectionists. Oh my God, that's really hard. Fancy going to good enough is good enough, which most leaders have embraced. Functional experts do perfection is everything. Strategic leaders recognize that good enough is good enough, because you'll never be certain about everything and there's too much going on. All of that's really hard. If this resonates with you, the exercise I suggest you do is you literally write down a list of everything you need to let go of to shift and extend your leadership bubble. It's literally, as I put that, broaden your wings. You know, go to a committee meeting you've never been to before and experience not knowing. Suggest that you own an area of the business that you don't know anything about and learn about not being the best. So ask yourself some questions. What do I need to let go of? How will that feel? You know, how much of a perfectionist are you? What will that be like? Who can help me in this? Find a good coach or a good internal mentor. And just really explore the letting go. You don't have to let go all in one go. You can test and try. Another book I love, by the way, is Herminia Ibarra's book, Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader. And she talks a lot about test and try with letting go and stepping up to leadership. All right. Strategy 4, the tug of tell. Now, again, it is really, it is, what's the word for it? It's really desirable to tell. We want to tell people what to do because it's swift and it's good for all the reasons we've talked about before. So it's much harder to delegate, to coach, to ask great questions, to be patient, to build other people's expertise. So if you recognize this, ask, and ask again. Practice. Before you solutionize something, ask someone's opinion first. Let them, you know, even if you think they give you a solution, you know, well, what do you think we should do? They give you a solution, you think, oh God, I'm not sure I'd do that. Let them do it, baby steps forwards. So really extend your coaching bubble. Really kind of broaden those wings to coach. And you don't have to go all out. If you know this isn't your area of strength, just practice asking and asking, you know, well, what do you think? I'd start with that question. What do you think? And going with their answer, unless it's absolutely atrocious. But other than that, go with their answer, and allow them to take small steps forwards with it.
Can I just make a comment, Lucy?
You certainly can.
I started managing a new team in January, and I do just naturally ask lots of questions, and I love to coach people. But when the previous leader of the team was very much in the managing space, it was it's quite a shock to the team. And actually what I found helpful was to talk them through my style and why I do what I do, and kind of explaining, you know, that this is and actually one of the ladies said to me, she said, "Oh, now I understand why you asked me like what so many questions." And I said, "Yeah, because I'm trying to get you to think, like try and get you to think, come up with your own answer." I said, rather than just telling you the answer, I said, I'm trying to get your mind to get there on its own. And she said, "Okay, now I understand." And now she felt better. But I think initially it was, sometimes it can be, and I think for the team, you talk about that security blanket, you feel like you're in control, but I think the team also feel like they've got that security blanket when you're just telling them what to do all the time. And you know, it's all down to the manager, and it's like, oh, there's a problem, there you go, manager, like you sort it out. Whilst I think the team found it quite challenging and liberating when I said, well, no, I trust you to make your own decision and that autonomy. But it is, I just wanted to comment on the fact that actually it's not just about us, it's also about the team getting used to that style, because it's not standard. Most people don't lead like that.
No, and you're absolutely right, and isn't it? It's really great. Thank you. It's a really great point to put up, which is a team gets used. So, for instance, if you take over a team and they go, "Well, I don't know, you tell me," you will immediately know that you've got that kind of bubble going on. That's that model going on. You'll also know, by the way, coaching, the most common reason why coaching goes wrong is that we're playing cat and mouse, which is, I actually want you to do something, but I'm going to ask you a question and pretend that I'm coaching you and leading you to my solution. And then when you go, "Well, I guess I should do that," I go, "Aha, great, you're going to do it." So those two things. And what you're talking about is a team that have been reliant on a leader or a manager, actually, is what's going on, telling them what to do.
Yes, and that's exactly what's happening.
Scary to suddenly go, "What you want me to come up with it?" And it's hard work for them, remember. It's speedy for them to rely on someone else to take all the kind of heavy lifting. Your wording is precisely what I would advise anyone to do, by the way. Which is, I trust in your resourcefulness. So rather than I'm trying to get you to answer this, it's better to go, "I trust in your resourcefulness." You don't need, you know, I don't have the answers, but you probably do. So I trust your resourcefulness, and then I'll be by your side to kind of guide it as we go along. So your second part of your wording is exactly what I do going forwards, whilst knowing when they don't know what to do. Funnily enough, when I'm interviewed as a leadership coach, I often find people go, "Please don't tell me you're just going to ask me questions. Please, sometimes just help me and give me some advice." So again, it's that kind of knowing when to step in and step out, but just be patient as you're doing exactly the right thing.
I had to, like you said, just adjust some of the bubbles. So I had to then move into more management for them to be more comfortable, and then over time kind of allow them to then be used to a different style of leadership, so that I still provided that blanket that they needed, and then slowly let go. But yeah,
it's exactly right. And that kind of bubble is that it gives you something to go, oh, that's what's going on. Someone's had a big management bubble, and that's what the team have been reliant on.
Yeah.
I can see there's a few comments in chat. What I'll do is I'll finish the last two strategies and then we'll come back to them so that we can lead that conversation. That was really cool input, Ines. Thank you. All right, strategy 5, you want to build your leadership bubble. One of the other things I'd suggest is you network for the future, not for today. Now, there's something called the competency trap, which is the art of getting better at what you already do well. And what I want for you is that you get better to align your leadership and expand that leadership bubble, is that you get better at what you don't already do well. Now, I do know, certainly as a positive psychologist and working with strengths, that we do always talk about play to your strengths. I actually tend to work with people slightly differently, which is understand your strengths, but I work with the 24 via strengths, but let's say you've got 5 top strengths, you've got another 19 to play with. Don't ignore them. Let's expand your strengths range. You know, let's network out, let's expand and broaden those strengths wings. So learn to do this, speak to new people. It's interesting to speak to people. I put this comment who are invested in future you. There's a lot of people, by the way, that you might go to for advice in your network who are very invested in you being in the position you're in at the moment and the way you do it at the moment. If you want to expand and grow, find people who aren't invested in present you in terms of network, but are invested in future you, and they're likely to lie outside of your company or be in a kind of function that you don't have a lot of connection with. So connect your team to the outside world, shake up those silos, get that network broadened. And my last strategy is, you know, and a coach is always going to help you. And I'm going to advocate that, as that's what I've spent the last 20 years training in coaching. But you can also be your own coach. In my book, by the way, I put a whole load of different questions you can ask yourself about being your own coach. But here's my 4 favorite. Every week, find 15 minutes, just to jot down, what kind of a leader have I been this week? You know, if I ask my team, what might they say? What do my circles look like this week? How am I helping my team to progress this week? And a question we rarely sit and ask, how can I bring more joy to work next week? Particularly as I'm seeing the pace of change just changing exponentially again with hybrid working, and a whole new load of anxieties seem to be emerging. So I think that this is a really important question about bringing more joy, because I think at the start of the pandemic, I had clients who were doing breakfast together virtually, quizzes together virtually. They were connecting in much deeper, more profound, how are you, seriously, how are you conversations with their team. And what I'm seeing is we're pinging back now to how it was before, which is we connect virtually, sometimes face-to-face, but when we connect virtually, we're just having team meetings as before, which is what are we doing? How do we do next week? What are we doing next week? And all that profundity and depth and fun has shifted again a bit. And I'm going to end this section here with my favourite quote: where attention goes, energy flows. So look at where your attention is, because for sure, that's where your energy will be flowing. And if you feel so depleted in energy, I write a lot about resilience and batteries and energy. If you feel yours is depleted, then the energy and attention needs to go to you, not to your team. You actually need to look after yourself first. Okay. So let me answer some of your questions. So Michelle, I don't know if you've had a look at them.
Yeah, so Elaine had mentioned that she feels like you've she agreed with your point that it can make you feel like you've lost some control and perspective. And then Andy Norman, he said that he can recognise what not knowing feels like. He changed his role, and Leslie also related to that. And Richard was agreed with asking questions that can be very powerful. So I don't know if you want to pick up on any one of those particular points.
I'll just stop that. Answer that one with Andy. I can't see you on the front screen there, Andy. I don't know if you're on the second screen there. But you're absolutely right. That not knowing is really difficult. What I love about your comment there, Andy, is the scary but liberating. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Andy, which is when you don't know, that's scary but liberating. I always think, for instance, when I coach someone whose industry I don't understand at all, I train all the leaders at Byte, who are a hugely beautiful digital agency, and I still am getting my head around what they do. But the beauty is I don't need to know, and that's liberating, but sometimes scary. So I agree with you, but it will make you a better leader, because you won't be able to rely on being the expert anymore. And I can see you nodding there, Leslie. I've just seen your comment, actually, when you've changed sector a few times. And you're absolutely right, Leslie, that technical knowledge is king or queen, I might say. And you suddenly realize how much you rely on it. We don't think we are just being a technical expert until it's pulled away from us. And then suddenly we think, oh my God, that's what I've been relying on. What do you both think of that?
I think in the organisations I've worked in, it's actually been an advantage not to have the technical knowledge. You can ask all the scary questions, you can ask about the elephant in the room, everybody wants to skirt around, but you can do it in absolute innocence, because you don't know the background, you don't know the history, you don't sometimes know why decisions have been made. So I've been able to turn it into quite a positive for me, but still, there's still days where I think, oh, that's a bit scary, because everyone in the room has been here for 20 years plus and knows it all.
Yeah. Yes. And if you showed them that model, Leslie, you would find that if they were being honest, they would have a huge management imbalance as a model. Because they've been there all their lives, they know it all, and that's what they rely on, which is actually, by the way, how we grow in confidence, which Andy will know, having shifted as well. We grow in confidence by stepping out of our comfort zone and suddenly not knowing anything. And as Richard says, that kind of asking questions the whole time is that demonstration of not knowing everything, which, going back to Ines' point, is what builds the capability of your team. Paul, let me address your point, because I think it's, let me hold a sec. I think it's a really interesting point. Paul says, one of the big things here is protecting yourself from other people's leadership balance challenges. So if we take the dance floor analogy, if you have a less than great DJ, i.e. your own manager or leader, it's difficult to get your own dance floor balcony proportions right. And Paul, you couldn't be more right, is that we often have the best intentions. Let me give you an example. I often find, Paul, that people come on a leadership coaching course with me, go back, have the best intentions, and their manager goes, oh God, don't tell me you've been on a course with Lucy. Right, anyway, let's just crack through this meeting, none of the old questions, and let's get everyone doing stuff. Anyway, here's what I want you to do this week. And you find yourself, like the elastic going back to how you were. The only thing I could say, I think it's very tricky, by the way, is that you hold true to your own model and that you role model best practice so that you lead others to it. And that you become the DJ leading, influencing upwards with how you would like your boss to work with you. I don't pretend that's easy. And influencing upwards is a whole nother subject, but that is actually what you have to do, which is you hold true to your own practice and influence others upwards. So for Sant, coming back to, can I share some of my favorite books on leadership? I've mentioned a couple. So Herminia Ibarra, I'm just looking at my shelves behind me there. Herminia Ibarra, Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader. I absolutely love and often send to people. Oh, I'm sorry, you put that in, Michelle. You answered that. William Bridges, Managing Transitions. Obviously, my friends, this came out, its first copy yesterday, which you will obviously all want and love. And if you do get it, please leave a review on Amazon and I will love you forever. What are my other absolute favorite go-to books? Mindset, Carol Dweck's book on mindset. And by the way, any of these, if you Google them, you will find, Bridges has written a lot, Ibarra has written a lot of articles, Carol Dweck has written a lot on mindset work. And the last one is Martin Seligman's first book on positive psychology. I really like those. Those are probably my favorite ones at the moment. Good. Michelle, other questions? I know you had some questions from people who hadn't managed to attend.
Yeah, I had one, Lucy, from Alice, and she asked, how long would a shift typically take and how do you avoid it? And you've touched on it, with that elasticity pulling you back to old habits. So she sort of said, how long would a shift typically take and how do you avoid it becoming a habit that you fall back into?
Let me just get that question on. How long would a shift in terms of shifting your kind of circles around? Is that what you think she means?
Yeah.
How long would that take?
Yeah, and how can you avoid? How can you avoid it becoming a habit that you fall back into?
How can you? Oh, okay. I'm really sorry, but both of those are very tough. Behavior change requires absolute consistency. Psychologically, behavior change is much harder to do than we actually give ourselves credit for. And we think we've changed a lifetime's behavior, but it actually takes a long time. So, for example, my mum was talking about rationing. I know it sounds like a crazy example. My 93-year-old mum was saying, I was talking about behaviors having changed post-pandemic. And she was saying, that the Second World War was 5 years, and then rationing happened for 5 years after that. And it took 10 years of that for her to do a lifetime of hoarding and eating and no waste, which made me really thoughtful about how long does it actually take to make shifts happen. I'd like to think that it takes much less time than that. And what I always suggest that we do is you try something new, you test and try. So for example, a couple of examples, if you try expanding that leadership bubble, as I've suggested, that you go to a meeting where you're not the expert, you take charge of a function, like you take charge of the well-being strategy, or you join the well-being team, something you might not know about, and you practice not being the expert, you'll start to find that expands. And when you experience success, it starts to become a habit. You might try coaching more, and as Richard was saying, asking more questions. And then when you experience, like Ines is finding at the moment, you will have to keep going, because people will, it's other people who are wedded to you being the way you were, remember, or how their last boss was. So you have to keep practicing. The third thing to answer that question is you need to write down that list I was suggesting earlier of what you have to let go of. For example, to be a good coach, you have to let go of speed and knowing the answers and being the expert. And you have to let go of that. But unless you've written it down, you will immediately bounce back to how you were before.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Lucy. Emma's got a question for you as well.
Yeah.
Hi, Lucy. I've recently left a company, and I'm in between jobs, so I'm sort of growing my knowledge a bit, looking for new roles and going into hopefully a new industry. How do you, once you start hearing all the new information from your team, stop yourself becoming an expert? So if you're comfortable in, like, my old role where I was very much an expert, I don't want to fall into that trap again in the new role. So how do you control yourself from stepping away from becoming an expert? Because the more you hear from your team, the more informed knowledge you gain. Yeah,
I mean, undoubtedly, it's another meaty topic, Emma, but let me try and be succinct in answering that for you. You will undoubtedly, what you have to work out, firstly, let me start at the beginning. What you have to work out is what do you have to know and what do you not have to know is the first thing. The second thing is to really rely on questions, and so that you get comfortable with going, I don't know the answer to that. What do you think? And you get really comfortable as a coach and use statements like, I don't need to know the answer to that. What do you think? You're the expert here. You walk me through it, and I'll ask you good questions along the way. Okay. Now, the third thing, Emma, is probably the hardest one, is you've got to get your mindset into a position of growth mindset. So if you know anything about Carol Dweck's work, any of you, you will know the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So the functional expert, Emma, is the fixed mindset, which is, I know it all, I'm comfortable knowing it all, and I'm deeply uncomfortable with not knowing it all. The growth mindset goes, I don't know it all, I don't mind not knowing it all, and I'm perfectly comfortable not knowing it all.
Okay.
And I would I would have a quick look at the difference between the fixed and growth mindset and get comfortable with not knowing, because otherwise you will immediately search out, you'll go, actually, I don't know the answer to that, but let me find out. And you'll go and quickly find out, so that within a month you are the expert on it all, so that you can answer everyone's questions.
Okay.
Does that help? A kind of 3-step quick process.
Yes. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem. I saw Beverly said, any book recommendations on influencing upwards? I'm going to be really dull, Beverly, and say, yes, my book. We have 2 minutes to go, Michelle, so I'm going to shut up here.
Yeah, well, that's great, Lucy. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us and for your interactions. Obviously, you can contact Lucy or myself post the session, and we'll send the recording out to you all as well.
Yeah.
I've put Lucy's book link in the chat as well. But Lucy, thank you so much. It's been a really valuable session. And I think, you know, certainly with leaders, I think one of the things about being a great leader is that strength, isn't it? That, you know, the ability to make those difficult decisions and sort of step out of their comfort zone to do all of the things that you've suggested. Really, it's very tough, isn't it?
It is tough, but it's really fun to do and play with and experiment. And once we know where we are, we can do something about it. So awareness is everything.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, I hope you all got something from the session. Again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Lucy. It's been brilliant. And have a lovely lunch and rest of your week, everybody.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.